Is this working? Okay. It's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon. I grew up in this town, so this is some form of homecoming for me. Um, when I learned of the theme of the event, I thought it was uh, quite fascinating, and I figured that the best I can actually do is to talk about how I own my stage, and I figured that you guys would benefit more from that than me talking from abstract and giving motivational talk. Personally, I don't enjoy motivational speech, so I don't want to do that for you guys today. Um, the last time I did a TEDx talk was in 2017, so that's about 9 years ago. So it feels like I'm getting very old. I finished university in 2016. That's about 9 years ago. So, you know, in the last decade, I've worked in one single industry, and I've sort of like built a reputation in that industry to the point where I can say that I actually own my stage in that industry. My company is at the forefront of shaping the African space and satellite industry, which is not something that you guys hear a lot about. Like, space and satellite industry sound very abstract, but yeah, it is exactly the way it sounds. And beyond this, I also do a lot of work across a lot of international organizations. And I want to talk about two things basically. I want to talk a little about where I am today, and then tell you the story of how I got here. 9 years ago, I was finishing university like most of you guys in this room. 10 years ago, I was, doing my internship, the, the ones you do before you graduate. And the decisions that I made basically when I was in school, I think is what actually got me to where I am today. One of the things I want to talk about is that when you had a lot of small steps together, it actually becomes something bigger. The cumulative of the small things actually grow to become the larger thing. So for a lot of you guys, you're trying to figure out what to do after school, what your career is going to look like, or you're thinking in the next 10 years, how do I own my stage? How do I become a voice in whatever career path you want to choose? How do you get to the peak of your career, or whether the industry you even want to work in does not exist currently? Like the industry I work in today didn't exist 10 years ago. So I sort of like had to do a lot of work to create that. So whether you're thinking, oh, how do I do that? Or whether you're thinking, how do I, build a profile in the industry that you've decided you want to work in, this is where I was like 10 years ago. I figured that one of the lessons I've learned in the last decade is that the combination of the small steps, in the future, it actually adds up. Let me give you a practical example. When I was in university, I used to do things like this, organizing events. And it didn't make a lot of sense. It wasn't that I wanted to go into event management or something like that. But along the way, my company figured that, oh, you know what, organizing events in the space industry would help us bring, thank you, would help us bring the key stakeholders together. And we've been doing that for the past 4 years. This year, we had a conference last month that generated ₦1 billion in revenue. ₦1 billion in revenue. So 10 years ago, doing this, it didn't make a lot of sense, but I learned a lot from doing that in the past, and this is just one of those things. Everything that I'm involved in today, whether in my company or in the companies that I'm invested in, or in the organizations that I work in, I can actually trace most of those things back to when I was in school. Yes, so accumulation of short terms actually equal to long term. So the small bit of stuff you're doing now, the hackathons you're getting involved in now, the small school projects that you're working on right now, continue doing that. It may not make sense today, but if you stay on the right path in the next decade, it's going to make sense, and you can actually look back to it and see that you're making the right decision. The second thing is that consistency is key. For people that have known me in the last decade, they know that I've worked in the same industry. I've been a space guy for more than a decade now. And one of the things that I see today is people try to, go with the wave. You shift your focus, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and within a decade, you realize you've not actually achieved anything. So it's very important to be consistent. You got to figure out what does the next decade look like for you? Where do you want to be in the next 10 years? And build consistency in that. The next point I want to make is that I would love for you guys to be a pace setter. And it's ironic because this is the pace setter state, so you should actually take some cue from that. In the world today, I figured a lot of young people, they just go with the flow. There is the, ed mentality mindset. Everybody's going in this direction, so I have to follow the direction. Everybody's learning virtual assistants. Everybody want to be a product developer. Everybody want to go into real estate. So, this is what's actually selling. So let me go into that. And this is why a lot of people don't find purpose. You have to figure out what sets you apart. If everybody's going in this direction, the only way you can stand out is by going in a different direction. So think of being a pace setter, conceptualize solutions or products that, people are not even thinking about today. And you'll see how that is going to create, a unique path for you. When I was in school, what was reigning was tech. Everybody was joining Microsoft and Google clubs and all of that. And I could have done that. But I figured that in the next decade, this technology, space and satellite technology that was shaping the world in other part of that was shaping, the way people live and interact in other part of the world, I figured that it would be time for Africa within the next decade. So I didn't do all of those tech stuff. I focused on space. And today, I'm a pace setter in that space industry. So you should, think of the next decade in that direction. Think of, if you're thinking of what is trending today and you try to focus your attention on what is trending today, you're already late. You got to think of, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, what is going to trend then? And then build a path to that. If everybody's learning Web3 today and you think, oh, let me also go into Web3, you're already late. It was like, some people that started investing in Bitcoin when it was at the peak. You got to think of what does the next 5 years look like? What does the next 10 years look like? And focus your attention on that. Next, you should build for the global markets. Global connectivity is imminent. A kid in a town like Oyo today has the same level of internet connectivity with a kid in Silicon Valley. The world is more connected than it has ever been, and it's going to keep going that way. And so when you're thinking of building solutions, when you're thinking of conceptualizing ideas, you have to think beyond your local environment. You have to think of how to build solutions for a global market. My company today makes millions of dollars in revenue, and 95% of that revenue does not even come from Nigeria. It does not even come from Africa. It comes from the global market. So from wherever you may be, there are a lot of opportunities to build for a global market, and don't take that for granted. Finally, if you don't build it, you actually risk never getting it done. A lot of you guys are conceptualizing solutions. You're thinking of products that has never been built before. You're thinking of, parts that has never been created. And, you're thinking, am I going to be the one to build this? Am I going to be the one to shape this industry? And you're thinking, oh, I don't want to take this risk. Or, it's just easier to do what everybody's doing. It's easier to learn product design. It's easier to learn front end and just, get a job like a normal person. But the only way you can be different is if you take a different path. And so whatever solutions that you're actually thinking about, you should go ahead and build it. Whatever industry you're thinking of creating, you should go ahead and do that. Because if you don't do that, you actually risk never getting it done. Like, if I didn't take the step that I took, building the African space industry, I would like to believe that it would never get done. I took a lot of risk, and I believe that's the way you shape the future. And finally, do not despise the days of little beginning. Like I said at the beginning of my talk, a lot of what you guys are doing now may seem insignificant. The courses, the skills that you're gaining today, the steps you're taking today may seem very insignificant. But if you continue in that path with a clear vision, it's going to amount to something bigger in the future. Thank you very much.